Hey guys, so we're actually doing kind of an interesting one right here. So this is pattern 9. This one looks a little worse than it actually is. I know I've been saying that a lot, but so the key with this guy is to not look at the bigger picture, like the whole pattern, because that can look a little overwhelming. Like, how do you get this to kind of snake around like that? Instead, what you want to do is just look at each individual tile by itself. So notice how, like, this one right here, see how it's a curved white strip in one corner, and then on the exact opposite corner, there's another curved white strip. Look at the one next to it. It's the same thing. Curved white strip, opposite corner, curved white strip. Every tile is doing the same thing. So, in fact, this whole thing is using the exact same tile everywhere. The only difference is they're rotated 90 degrees randomly. So when you kind of piece them all together, it looks like it's kind of this sort of randomly snaking pattern, but it really is the same tile over and over and over. So it's probably not going to be as bad as you think. Now what I'm going to do here is go over here to a new graph. We're going to start off by making a shape, and we're going to make a disk. Okay, and then I just want to offset this to kind of get it so the curved part of the disk is only in one corner. So to do that, we're going to make a transform 2D. Okay, let's offset it by 0.5. Now, in the process of doing this, it's kind of interesting because when I've offset it, you'll kind of recognize this little shape. That looks familiar. That's the same thing we have in here. So just by kind of a happy mistake, or happy accident, I guess, in this case, we have made the pattern for the inside of the strip. So we're going to hold on to that. We're going to come back to that guy. Let's do this again. I'm going to duplicate it. This one, though, on my duplicate, I'm going to change a couple things. I only want one corner. So we are going to take the tiling to absolute and say no tiling. Just let me move it over and don't repeat. So I just get one section. Now I want to get that in the opposite corner. So to do this, I'm going to take this guy. We're going to do another transform. Move it below it somewhere. And on this one, we're just going to say flip 180 degrees. So that puts another version in the opposite corner. After that, we're going to add these guys together using a max blend mode. You could also use addition. They're very, very similar. So max lighten. Fantastic. Now, after that, we're going to try to get this to be the strip. This means we need to use an edge detect, which I've been using quite a bit in all these videos. So let's just kind of make that thicker, flip it, and that's probably already very, very close. Yep, that's probably about the right thickness. So that looks decent. Now the next thing we want to do is try to get these little star patterns to be inside of this section right here. Now this part's kind of interesting. We're going to use this thing called the circular splatter, which I have used in one of the other videos already, but we need to take that star pattern and arrange it in almost like a circular shape, and then I can kind of use a piece of that to kind of overlap with all those curved areas. So I'll show you how to do this. We're going to make splatter circular, not the color one, but just the regular splatter circular. You're going to connect this into it, and then I'm going to say on the splatter circular, use the image input. Now the problem is, you'll notice that unfortunately, because it is using the image input, it's also putting this kind of white square of the full image on a black background. This border problem is going to pop up as a bigger issue down the road. So to fix this, all I need to do is, before it goes to the splatter circular, let's invert this guy so it's a white star, and that way that black outline on it blends in with the black background of the splatter, and you don't really see it. So we're just going to move these guys up here somewhere out of the way. Okay, that looks probably okay. Now the next thing is going to be, how many splatters do I need? How many different shapes? So if you kind of look at a full circle right here, which is kind of what we're currently doing, there's going to be, looks like 12 total. So we're going to click on the splatter, and we're going to say we need 12 different patterns. So we're a little bit closer. Now after that, I could go down here and scale it, but I think what I want to do is immediately figure out what this is going to look like when it overlaps with it. So I kind of need to put this sort of curved thing in a corner, exactly like we were doing here, by kind of offsetting those little the two discs. So it's very, very similar. We're going to take this, I'm going to do a transform 2D, and I'm going to do another offset by 50%. 0.5, 0.5, and let's also turn off the repeat so I don't have it in all the corners. This is going to just avoid a couple issues down the road. Let's focus on one first, then we'll get it working everywhere else. Now once we've kind of done that, like it seems okay, but let's try to overlap it with this thing and kind of see how it looks. So I'm going to take this guy, we're going to make a blend node, and I'm just going to blend in one corner first. Now currently, if I put this to something like a max, you can see that it's too far in. I need it to overlap with this section. So we're going to put it to subtract, because that's eventually what it's going to have to be. You can't see it, but if I click on this, I'm then going to hold down Shift and Command, and I'm going to scale it up bigger. See how by doing that, I'm kind of scaling it out and eventually causing them to overlap where I want. So now I think they're kind of centered. My issue with it is the shape itself is a little bit too big. So let's look at the reference. They're probably in the right spot. They're just too large. That I can fix back on the splatter circular. So we're going to go back here, come down a little bit. We have our scale. Let's just pull that back until it feels about right. That looks pretty good. All right, we've got it. So there's one piece right there. Now remember, I need it in the opposite corner. So before we blend this in there, let's kind of move this down a little bit. I also need to take this guy to make another transform, and we're going to flip it 180 degrees, exactly like we did over here with this guy. So this one is going to be 180 degree flip. Let's make a blend, and we're going to mix these two together. So that with this one, put it to a max. That is then what is put in the blend. So now we have both sides. We're almost there. The only thing we're missing is that on the outside of the whole thing, there needs to be a super, super thin white outline. So basically for each tile. That should not be too difficult. Let's do a shape node, and I'm just going to bring in the scale just a tiny bit. And remember, it has to be white. You can see how right now I have like a black outline on it. I'm hitting space to kind of view that tiling. So let's maybe bring this guy down here on the underside, and I'm going to invert it so it's now the white border, and now we can just add that with the other one. So we're going to take that, this, set it to a max, double click, there it is, there's our border. It might be too thick, but we're going to find out when we tile it. So we can now tile this guy. We're going to take this, put it in a generator, make sure this is going to the pattern input, and say on the generator, use the image input. You can see this is tiling. We're doing it right, but it's not kind of randomly rotated. So if you just scroll down a little bit here, under rotation, crank up the rotation random, and this will start putting it in different directions. And you can also change the random seed. This will just kind of randomize where they're going. It's just for different variations of the same pattern. And I think in the reference, we need to scale those down. Yeah, so this is 6 by 6. I have too many of them. So on the tile generator, we're going to do 6 by 6, not 10 by 10. And there we go. We got it. I think the white border is probably pretty close to the right size. Mine might be a little thick, so if that was the case, I would just go back here to the shape, and I didn't need to scale it down quite as much. Maybe like 0.985 or 0.99. There we go. Pretty cool though, right? That one's not too bad.